Good evening. It seems that we're running fast into the month of November and time is just flying by. This week we're going to be covering labs 20 and 21, and you'll notice also that during lab 20 we will be having our third lecture exam. So of course things get a little bit hectic with all of that, and all of you are very well aware of how that will work. We should be able to use the neighboring labs, so it should be pretty easy to get everyone situated, but I always appreciate your help in allowing me to maybe be at two places at the same time in terms of getting exams handed out to people while at the same time we're handling and balancing what's all going on in lab. It looks like Tara and Kyle and Aaron are up for Open Lab this week, so try to find somebody to cover you if you're not going to be able to be there. You all have been doing a great job of that, and our Open Labs have gone quite smoothly, but just a reminder on that. We'll also be covering Lab 21 on Thursday, and I'll talk a little bit about both of those. But one of the noteworthy things is that on Thursday, we do need to announce that the unknown reports will be due on the 14th. So 1 week from from assigning the unknown reports, we'll want to collect those. And the reason that we want to do it that way is that a lot of students will opt to use their late coupon for this assignment, and so they'll want to put it off to the 21st. And then what that means is that it enables you to collect all of the unknown reports, even the late ones, prior to the Thanksgiving break, so that affords you that break to get those turned around and get them back to the students. Because quite honestly, when we come back from break, which this is absolutely terrifying to me, I can't even quite wrap my mind around it. But once we get back from break, we only have 1 week of class left, and actually I'll be leaving for Italy on the 8th, and so I'll be trying to actually madly get final exams graded on Saturday the 7th and maybe early in the day on the 8th. So if anyone is up for some weekend action and wants to be the most phenomenally awesome TAs ever in the history of the world, you would help me grade final exams so that I could get those turned over before I have to submit grades before leaving for Italy. So let me know, because I'm being a little bit terrified right now about all of that to come. Um, but obviously, one note that is going to change, practical exam number 2 no longer going to be occurring, which means that in theory, that Thursday can be a no lab day. It might be a day when we will further be assessing a few of the skill sets if students haven't had a chance to show us those particular skills. So what I would like to put forward today is that there will be 3 skills that I've thought of that we should make a rubric for and assess. So I'm just going to bring up a blank Word document, and I'll mention these on the email that I send out to you, but here are the ideas that I have for the last points that would have been counted on the practical exam. So skills, I think we should assess prior to the end of the term. One, I would say, would be just general sterile technique. And so if we could just go around to each student with a rubric that I'll make once we agree on these, and ask them to show us that at some point, or tell the students, even better yet, I'm thinking if we hand out a rubric to them and say before the end of the semester you need to get assessed on these skills, and once you've got assessed on all of them, you will hand this rubric back to us. So sterile technique is one of them. Maybe we could have them just show us how they would inoculate, something from a single isolated colony. Maybe we could have them do a T-streak from a single isolated colony. I'm not sure how we want to demo that, but you guys can give me your input. I think the second one that we want to look at is focusing the microscope, because I still see struggle on that, and I can't even spell it, so I don't know how I expect them to do it. And then, so with that, again, we'd have another line on the rubric that would be dedicated to that skill. And then lastly, I think reading a hydrometer would show us, it's not that reading a hydrometer per se is an essential skill that they leave with, but reading an instrument is. And so I think that this idea is that the particular skill encompasses a lot of things that they may have to do. I would like to add a fourth one to this. So in the email, I will include these 3, and I'll ask you all to come up with a possible fourth that we all think they should leave with. And if we could do that by Tuesday, please, that would be absolutely supercalifragilistic, because then I can make that rubric with the 4 lines, and each one of the skills would be worth 5 points apiece, so 5, 10, 15, and 20. And that would round out the 30 points for the practical exam. So I think that would do us. So that I would like to get feedback from you by Tuesday. The other thing that I need to get from you by Tuesday is some idea of intent to TA next semester. And I think I've already gotten that from several of you, but if there's anyone who's just still a little unsure on TAing, if you could even just tell me on Tuesday, I think I'm going to try to TA, that would be great to know, so I kind of just have in mind. And then if you could get to me those applications when you're able. I know that there's still some scheduling logistics that you're trying to work out. So just a lot of busyness up and coming, and fastly heading into the early end of the semester. Let's take a minute to look at labs 20 and 21, checking out the TA guidelines. Before you get started on Tuesday, you're going to want to make sure that we have the penicillin sensitive Staph aureus sitting at the camp station. I'll try to also remember that. Also, for the rapid KOH test, because they're not going to be needing the slides in their slide box for too much longer, if they could dedicate one of those slides to the rapid KOH test, it would be a very efficient use of slides. It would cause us to have to throw away less slides. On Tuesday, they're also going to be writing about the growth patterns in their nutrient broth, and there's some terms here that will help them write about those. I will try to remember to draw on the board what these look like, but you can also help me remember to do that, particularly Josh and John and Andy at the beginning of the day on Tuesday. So lab 20 lecture is pretty straightforward. However, there are a couple of nuances on this lecture that I just want to point out. So I'm going to bring that up really quickly. Do know that the students have talked in lecture about cyclic AMP, and I like to differentiate cyclic AMP as a tiny molecule that's a secondary messenger from a large heat-stable protein that is the camp factor, a very different thing. Remember that the camp factor does bind to already damaged red blood cells damaged by beta hemolysins and actually causes further lysis. And that's what we're looking for, is that enhancement of beta hemolysis that we see as the arrow. Do note that when you show this on the overhead, that arrow is more visible to the students than it often is to you standing right next to the overhead projection. This is a definitive test for Streptococcus agalactiae, and so it's a good time to further speak about the importance of presumptive tests or definitive tests. And hopefully some of them will have predicted this as their definitive test. We'll also talk about the MRVP, and yes, Erin, this is the one that is the opposite, where the positive turns red instead of yellow. And we'll want to talk about that pathway as versus the 2,3-butanediol pathway, where again, red is positive on that one. So the rapid KOH test is actually a test that is used to help support a gram stain, but do bring up to the students that the rapid KOH test in no way allows them to determine purity or cellular morphology arrangement. So that's the downfall of the rapid KOH as compared to the gram stain. That's lab 20. We'll talk just briefly about 21 and a couple of things on the TA guidelines. We're going to want to assign the unknown report on this day, so we want to be clear about the expectations for that report, and particularly that we want them to fill out the tables in their notebook as their rough draft, as well as retyping those tables. I have actually tried to make that clear over the course of all 4 lab sections about the fact that we do want them to begin to jot down proper entries in their lab manuals. So if they haven't done that, it isn't for lack of having communicated that. The other thing during lab 21 is that the minute that they step in the room, we're going to want to have them start their MRVP test. It does take about 40 minutes for the VP part of the test to start to show. And you will see about midway through your lecture for this one, some of the VP tests beginning to get that pink color. This is the last day that we will introduce new biochemical tests, and there are a number of them. I did want to call your attention to the starch and spirit blue test, which I wanted to just mention that in lecture we've already talked about the ability of organisms to hydrolyze fats. So you can relate this back to lecture, calling on their knowledge of the TCA cycle and glycolysis, and have them think about why it is important for the organisms to secrete these enzymes. These are definitive tests for a gram-positive rod, so not everyone will do them. So that's a good note that maybe they should take a look at somebody's test who did do them, because they're not very prevalent amongst the class. Only a few people will have done them. Okay, I think that primarily covers the up and coming events, maybe a very rapid lowdown on what's to come. So I'll include a reminder of the importance of determining those rubrics for skill-based assessment by Tuesday. That is to say, for you to give me that fourth category, help with what other skill we might want them to display or show us. I'll include that in the email, and I hope you all have had a fantastic weekend and that you have a wonderful Sunday evening.